Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraja Acharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Gorakishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Jayam Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Jaya Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sa Goswami Prabhu ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Ganga Mai ki jai, Yamuna Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Pranath Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, ISKCON Vartma Guru Vrinda ki jai, Samaveta Bhakti Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru, Sri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And I forgot to say, Gaura Pramanande, Hari Bo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Jaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottam.
Devam Saraswatam Vyasam.
Devam Saraswatim Vyasam.
Ito Jayam Niridayat.
Tato Jam Dirayat.
Nasta Preshu Avatareshu.
Nasta Preswa Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one the personality of Godhead, Narayan, under Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, under Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and under Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by the rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service under the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right, good morning, everybody. Today is May 10th, 2025, and it's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Huh? Is it the 11th?
Yeah. Sorry.
So it is May 11th, but it's still Mother's Day. So happy Mother's Day. It's because I write these notes the night before and I put the wrong date on them.
That's okay. I skipped Mother's Day yesterday.
I saw that, yeah. Okay, so we're reading 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, chapter 28. Paranjana becomes a woman in his next life, and we're doing verse 25. Vikrishyamanaha prasapam
Vikrishyamana prasapam
yavanena balisyasya.
yavanena balishasya.
Sorry.
That's my dad.
All right. Yavanena balisyasa
Yavanena baliyasa
navindatamasa vishta
navidatamasa vishta
sakayam surdam puraha
sakayam suridam pura
vikrishyamanaha prasapam
Vikrishyamana prasapam
yavanena baliyasa
yavanena baliyasa
navindatamasa vishta
navidatamasa vishta
sakayam surdam puraha
sakayam suridam pura
vikshamana prasad vikshamana prasad. Oh my gosh, can you tell?
Vikrishyamana prasapam
It's like, it feels like there's an extra syllable in there. Vikrishyamana prasabam
Krishyamana prasabam
yavanena baliyasa
yavanena baliyasa
navandatamasa vishta
navdatama savishta
sakayam surdam puraha
sakayam suridam pura
Vikrishyamana prasabam
Vikrishyamana prasabam
yavanena baliyasa
yavanena baliyasa
navandatamasa vishta
navdatama savishta
sakayam surdam puraha.
sakayam suridam pura.
Okay, please chant.
Vikrishyamana prasabam
Vikrishyamana prasabam
yavanena baliyasa
yavanena baliyasa
navindatamasa vishta
navandatamasa vishta
sakayam suridam pura
sakayam suradam para.
Krishna.
Vikrishamana prasabam
Vikrishyamana prasabam yavanena baliyasa navandatamasa vishta sakayam suradam para.
Krishyamana prasamam
Mana prasabam
yavanena baliyasa
yavanena baliyasa
navdatamasa vishta
navandatamasa vishta
sakayam suridam pura.
sakayam suridam para. Word for word, and that first word, like I practiced that yesterday and today, asked advice, and still had trouble with it. So my apologies. What? Yeah, okay.
Why is Krishna giving you trouble?
I don't know. He likes to do that, I think. Huh? Yeah. Vikrishyamana. Vikrishyamana. Being dragged. Here, let's try it again. Vikrishyamana.
Krishyamana
Being dragged. Prasabam.
prasamam
Forcibly.
forcibly
Yavanena.
yavanena
By the Yavana.
vadhyavana
Baliyasa.
baliyasa
Who was very powerful.
who is very powerful.
Na Avandat.
Nahavanda
Could not remember.
not remember
Tamasa.
Masa
By darkness of ignorance. Avishta.
Vishta
Being covered.
being covered
Sakayam.
Sakayam
His friend.
his friend
Surdam.
Suhridam
Always a well-wisher.
always well wishing
Puraha.
Pura
From the very beginning.
from the very beginning.
Okay, translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When King Paranjana was being dragged with great force by the powerful Yavana out of his gross ignorance, he still could not remember his friend and well-wisher, the Super Soul. Please repeat. When King Paranjana was being dragged
King Puranjana was being dragged
with great force by the powerful Yavana
with great force by the powerful Yavana
out of his gross ignorance.
out of his gross ignorance.
He could still not remember his friend and well-wisher,
He could still not remember his friend well-wisher.
the super soul.
So,
Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 5:29, Lord Krishna says, Oktaram Yagirtapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Surdam Sarva Bhutanam Natpamam Shantim Richati. A person can be full in Krishna consciousness and become happy and satisfied if he knows but three things, namely, that the Supreme Lord Krishna is the enjoyer of all benefits, that he is the proprietor of everything, and that he is the supreme friend of all living entities. If one does not know this and functions instead under the bodily conception, he is always harassed by the tribulations offered by material nature. In actuality, the Supreme Lord is sitting by the side of everyone. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hrideshe Rinjana Tishtati. Bhagavad Gita 18:61. The living entity and the supersoul are sitting side by side in the same tree, but despite being harassed by the laws of material nature, the foolish living entity does not turn towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead for protection. However, he thinks that he is able to protect himself from the stringent laws of material nature. This, however, is not possible. The living entity must turn toward the Supreme Personality of Godhead and surrender unto him. Only then will he be saved from the onslaught of the powerful Yavana or Yamaraj. The word Sakayam, friend, is very significant in this verse because God is eternally present beside the living entity. The Supreme Lord is also described as Surdam, ever well-wisher. The Supreme Lord is always a well-wisher, just like a father or mother. Despite all the offenses of a son, the father and mother are always the son's well-wisher. Similarly, despite all our offenses and defiance of the desires of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord will give us immediate relief from all the hardships offered by material nature if we simply surrender unto him, as is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Mameva ye prapadyante mayametam tarantete. Unfortunately, due to our bad association and great attachment for sense gratification, we do not remember our best friend, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Chalakaya Chakshara Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kata Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamstra Shri Rupam Sagratata Sahagana Raghanatamritam Tam Sajivam Savadetam Savadutam Parijana Samitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakambitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Rangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Pre Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasani Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Okay, very nice. So in this verse, we can see that King Puranjana, he's in the process of leaving his body. And even though he's in the process of leaving his body, he still cannot remember Krishna in the form of the supersoul. Instead, he's remembering his wife and his life. And this is why what we do is called like a spiritual practice, because we're practicing for that day that King Puranjana is going through right now. And that's the day that we leave our bodies, the day that we die. So death is sort of like the final exam of life. And if we don't pass, we have to not only take the class again, but we have to take the exam again, right? And then we get born again and again and again, because we're not passing our exam. And so that means all of us here, we failed that exam. right? Good. I know, Chris. Why didn't you study harder? But that's okay. If we pay attention this time and we do our studies, we have a good shot of passing this time around. So Srila Prabhupada tells us by this practice, we actually become fearless. And let's see here. Got some nice quotes here. Yeah, so this is from the purport from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 24, verse 52. By practicing Bhagavad Bhakti Yoga, one becomes fearless and joyful. Unless one becomes fearless and joyful, he cannot understand the science of God.
What was the verse?
4, 24, 52. Just the purport. So we can understand from what Prabhupada is saying us that this being fearless and joyful is actually like a prerequisite to understanding the science of God. That purport also says, when one sees the lotus feet of the Lord, all kinds of doubts and fears within the heart are vanquished. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in order to make spiritual progress, one must become fearless. Abhayam sattva samshuddhi. So, Bhagavad Gita 16, 1 through 3, it lists a series of qualities, and these are transcendental qualities that godly men are endowed with, right? And one of those is fearlessness. I'm not going to read all of them because we've read that a lot over the years. But that report continues. Fearfulness is the result of material involvement. It is also said in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:237, fearfulness is a creation of the bodily conception of life. As long as one is absorbed in the thought that he is this material body, he is fearful. And as soon as one is freed from this material conception, he becomes Brahmabhuta, or self-realized, and immediately becomes fearless. Brahmabhuta prasanatma. Without being fearless, one cannot be joyful. The bhaktas, the devotees, are fearless and always joyful because they are constantly engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. So this fearlessness is a prerequisite to understand the science of God. Now, people in general, they have so many fears, especially right now. There seems to be a lot of fear everywhere, more so than maybe 20 years ago. And so I did a little bit of research to find out what were the top fears that people had. And so this is a survey that was done with Americans. So these are the top 3 fears that Americans have so far as 2023. So the top one was government corruption. People were very afraid of this. And all you have to do is go on social media to see this, right? You see people, it doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum they're on. This is a big fear for so many people, so much so that they're, getting in horrible disagreements with their friends and family members because they don't agree with their, their chosen politician, right? And each side is saying how can't you see this other side is so corrupt, right? And they're just so horrible. And so, people are so in fear of that. But if you are Krishna conscious, you don't need to give in to that fear, right? You don't even have to experience that fear that people have. Because one, that Krishna is in control. You're not in control. Krishna's in control. And we also know that we're eternal. We are eternal spirit souls. And this political situation, whatever is bothering you, that's temporary. And you also understand that this is our karma, individually and collectively, right? And that's being played out. For a devotee, what that means is that that's actually bringing us that much closer to Krishna, right? We have, there's so much of this karma to answer for, and then it's done, and then we can go back home, right? As long as we're practicing, we're being Krishna conscious, right? But for someone who's not Krishna conscious, it's very terrifying because they don't know that they're eternal, right? They think, oh gosh, this is my whole life, and I'm going to lose, whatever privileges that I had or whatever it is that people are afraid of. Okay, so the number 2 fear was economic collapse, and that's a big fear, right? Economic collapse. And so all those things that we mentioned before still hold, that Krishna is in control, not us. We're eternal. This is a temporary situation. And again, this is part of our karma being played out individually and collectively. But also, we know that Krishna, he manages to feed all the animals, right? He feeds the elephant that eats so much more than us. So why would he not make sure we're fed? I've personally gone through so many iterations of personal economic situations. I've had a lot of wealth. I've had absolutely zero wealth. I've had a little bit. And in each one of those situations, I was fed. It was not an issue, right? In each one of those situations, I was clothed. It wasn't an issue, right? Now, was I clothed in the style that I preferred? Maybe not. Was I eating the best food? Possibly not, but still, we have to ask ourselves, do we really need all this stuff, right? Right now, the economy's, a lot of people are really tense about the economy, right? Because there's these new tariffs enacted that have put a real damper on these cheap Chinese imports that were coming in, right? And so a lot of people are very upset about this, and they're like, well, I need my stuff. I need my stuff. Why can't I order, 15 shirts for $25 anymore? But these are shirts that are poor quality, and we don't really need them. Do we really need to have that many shirts of poor quality? I don't know. And that's because we're addicted. Our society as a whole is addicted to these material things. And when somebody threatens that, people get scared. But really, we don't need those things. And a devotee especially doesn't need those things, right? And so, therefore, huh?
We don't need them.
You don't need them?
They don't need them.
Yeah. They don't need them? Yeah. So, yeah, a devotee doesn't need these things because we're focused on serving Krishna, right? And not serving our senses. We have so many better things to do than to focus on all these things and be scared about that, right? So there's no reason to be afraid of that if you're a devotee. Okay, so the third one is nuclear war, right? This is a pretty scary thing. This is, and it's interesting that that's only the third fear and not the top one. But so again, all those same things that we talked about before. Krishna's the controller, part of our individual and collective karma, and we're eternal. So even if we die, we're still eternal spirit souls. But also, we have the added benefit, if we're a devotee, if we die, we either go home to Krishna, right? Or we get born into a wealthy family or a transcendental family, right? A family of transcendentalists. So again, not much to really be scared of. Now that doesn't mean we shouldn't, have some concern and just, we shouldn't be encouraging nuclear war. But there's no reason to let this kind of preoccupy your mind and be kind of sucked into this, fearful state of being all the time. And the other thing is that people in distress at that moment, it's very easy for them to turn to Krishna, right? When people are distressed. Because when things are going well, people, they're not really thinking so much about God, right? They're thinking, oh, hey, times are good. Oh, how am I going to enjoy next, right? But when things are bad, people are like, oh my gosh, why is this happening? What can I do to fix it, right? And a lot of times people turn to God, right? Because, what's that saying? There's no atheists in a foxhole, right? So during a war, a man's trapped, people are trying to kill him. There's just carnage all around. What does he have left but God, right? Krishna. And then think about like Queen Kunti. Queen Kunti, she had so many terrible things happen to her. But then she said, please let these calamities happen again and again. Because when she was having those calamities, she knew Krishna was there. Krishna was there. So people think that they can protect themselves with money, with skills, with their beauty, with their status, with their things. I've seen this firsthand. One of my friends, had so much money. So much wealth, and they were very fearful of losing their wealth. But they thought, I need to just keep making more money because that will protect me, right? They were very fearful of the government in particular, losing certain rights, and still, instead of turning to God, turning to Krishna, they just thought, oh no, I'm just going to keep earning more money. And they're still living in this state of fear, right? Their money is not protecting them from that fear. It's making it worse. And we see this, people, they spend so much money and effort trying to make themselves beautiful, the plastic surgery and makeup and so many things, right? Because they have this fear that people aren't going to love them if they're not beautiful, right? So they're trying to protect themselves from reality, basically, by, making themselves look better so that they can have a false sense of security. And really that security can only happen, that can only come is if we surrender to Krishna. So people are doing all these things, but we know that in Bhagavad Gita it says, the spirit soul bewildered by the influence of false ego thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So the only way to, really truly protect yourself is to surrender to Krishna, and that's what makes us fearless. We struggle so much to change the outcome of things. People struggle so hard, and this causes fear and pain and anxiety. But if you accept and surrender, things become easier, right? You become fearless. I have two kind of very crude examples. One is, a mother or a father, they want their son to become a doctor or a lawyer, right? And so they'll pressure their child to become a doctor or a lawyer, but that child wants to become an artist, right? And so it causes so much distress in the family. They're arguing back and forth, or perhaps the child, obeys the parents, but then becomes miserable, right? Because they're not doing what they want to do. They're a doctor or a lawyer, and they want to be an artist, right? And that kind of struggling against actual what is what's making them miserable. Whereas if the parent, took into account, that the child's proclivities were not to become a doctor or a lawyer, then things would be a lot easier for the whole family. Another example, this one's especially crude, but it's a good metaphor. It said, like a drunk driver gets into a car accident, and they end up flying through the windshield, or they come out of this accident, like a terrible accident. The car's totaled, and the drunk is fine, right? Drunk has maybe a few scratches, and that's it. And this is a known phenomenon. Now, why is that? Well, it's because the person was so intoxicated, they didn't tense up when they went through the windshield, right? And so they just, were loosey-goosey because they were so intoxicated, and therefore they were not injured. Now, I'm certainly not advocating everybody go around driving drunk, because I'm using this as a metaphor, that it's when we're trying so hard to change the outcome, by getting plastic surgery or building up our money so much, then we live in this fear of losing that, right? And so it's just the way we can get out of that fear is by surrendering to Krishna and by understanding that we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it. And don't let those modes of material nature get you so entangled. I've seen so many people just live in a constant state of fear because they're just watching the news all day, right? They're focusing on politics or the news, and they're just in fear, a constant state of fear. And they're just, to the point where like that's all they can talk about. They're alienating their friends and their family because they're in this constant state of fear. And that's because they're just letting the modes of material nature entangle them instead of really kind of rising above that and realizing they're not the controller. Krishna is the controller. If there's something that you can have an effect on that's positive, by all means do it. But otherwise, what is the purpose of focusing, it's like rolling around in the dirt. You're just rolling around in the dirt, and not the dirt in Vrindavan, okay? But rolling around in the dirt outside a porta potty or something, Why do that? Right? You're just going to make yourself agitated and dirty. So yesterday we had our lovely celebration of Lord Nrsimha, right? And that story of Prahlad and Lord Nrsimha really shows, like, Prahlad was so fearless, right? Because of his devotion to Krishna, he was so fearless. Even as his dad, even as his father is trying to kill him, he's still talking about Krishna, right? He's like preaching to his dad. His dad's trying to kill him, and he's still talking about Krishna. And then Krishna came because he's the friend and ever well-wisher of Prahlad and of everybody. And Krishna came in the form of Lord Nrsimha. And he killed, he came because he was the friend and ever well-wisher of Prahlad, but he's also the friend and ever well-wisher of everyone. And so even though Hiranyakashipu was this great demon, he killed him, but Hiranyakashipu was then liberated, right? If Krishna kills a demon, that demon's liberated because he's the friend and ever well-wisher of everybody. So I wrote in my notes, Krishna's our real bestie, right? He's our real bestie. He's our best friend. So we want to turn towards him, and we don't want to misuse the little bit of free will that we have, right? So people always say that, well, what about free will? What about free will? We do have free will, but we have the free will to turn towards Krishna or to turn away from him. But don't misuse that minute amount of free will, because, if I don't have the free will to like suddenly turn into a bird and fly away right now. I don't have that free will, right? I mean, Chandrika thinks I might have that free will, but huh?
Next slide.
Yeah, not in this life. I might in my next life. Yeah, that's right. I'm hiding my wings. But we do have that free will to turn towards Krishna or turn away from him. And we want to turn towards him. And it doesn't really matter, where we've been per se. It matters to some degree about, what kind of karma we have. But in actuality, it doesn't really matter. What matters is where we're going, right? Look at Prahlad. He was born in a demon family, but still he was like one of the greatest devotees of Krishna. And we should take that to realize it doesn't matter so much where we've come from, as long as we know where we're going, which is towards Krishna in some way, right? And even people who are not pure devotees, or maybe they're not following so strictly, or even sometimes at all, sometimes those people can have a profound impact on people's spiritual life. And so it's very easy to like criticize people and say, oh, that devotee is just nonsense. He's not he's not, following very strictly, or he talks about so much nonsense. But at the same time, that same devotee can have a huge impact on bringing someone here to Krishna consciousness, right? And so it's very important to realize that and to treat everybody with kindness and love and respect. And if they're trying to serve Krishna in some way, they're a devotee, okay? So today it's Mother's Day. I wanted to talk a little bit about mothers. So we know, or maybe I think everybody in this room knows, it's said that there's 7 kinds of mothers. Anybody know which? Yeah.
The mother of the Guru,
Mm-hmm.
the birth mother, Mother Earth, the mother of, I got a brain fart.
That's okay. Anybody else? Yep.
Cow.
Cow.
That's not,
The what?
that's,
A nurse? Yeah.
Nurse.
The wife of the Brahma,
Yeah.
the queen.
And the queen. Yeah. There we go. Nice. Yeah. So there's 7 kinds of mothers. Srila Prabhupada tells us that the birth mother, that's our first guru, right? The first guru is the birth mother. And so today we're celebrating everybody's mothers. And so think about that. Your mother's your first guru. She teaches you, right, how to behave and how to take care of yourself. And if you're fortunate enough to have devotee mother, she teaches you how to love Krishna, or at least gets you started off on that path. And so I wanted to talk about one of my favorite stories of mothering. Is I wanted to talk about Dhruva and Suniti, right? So we know that Dhruva, he was very upset because he was trying to sit on the lap of his father, who was the king, and his stepmother, his father had several wives, and his stepmother wouldn't let him sit on the lap of his father. And she said very meanly, he's like 5 years old, she said very meanly, you cannot sit on the lap of your father because you did not come from my womb. And if you want to sit on the lap of your father, then you need to go ask God to be born again from my womb, right? So that is super harsh. I mean, really, really harsh. And I mean, who would speak to a child that way? Anyway, so naturally Dhruva was quite upset, and he went to his mother and he told her what happened. And she basically told him, well, in a way she's right. You should just go ask God what to do about this. Don't worry so much. And he said, well, where is God? And she said, well, I hear people go to the forest to find God, right? Find Krishna. So Dhruva, at 5 years old, he leaves. He goes to the forest, and he starts looking for Krishna, and it's so cute. He keeps asking. He's walking. He's asking the trees and the animals, "Are you God? Are you God? Are you God? Have you seen him?" It's really adorable. And ultimately, he runs into Narada Muni, who then instructs him on how to find God, basically. And the reason that Dhruva wanted to find him, he said, I want a kingdom greater than my father's and my grandfather's and my great-grandfather's. He basically wanted to kind of show his stepmother, hey, I'm doing good now, right? I've got a kingdom bigger than my father's and grandfather's. And so he starts this practice. Does anyone remember the mantra that Narada Muni gave him? How about you? Very good. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yeah. And so Dhruva started his practice, right? And he was doing so many austerities, just amazing austerities. But I don't remember exactly what order they were in, but I think first he was just eating fruits for a period of time. Then he was just eating grass for a period of time. Then he was just drinking water for a period of time. then just taking a breath, something like, I think it was like every 12 days or something like that. Some really amazing austerities. And eventually he saw the Lord in his meditation, and he was sort of, enjoying just seeing the Lord. And then the Lord disappeared from his meditation, and he opens his eyes, and what do you know? There he is, standing right in front of him. And Dhruva's just kind of dumbfounded. And the Lord takes his conch shell and kind of bonks him on the head like and suddenly Dhruva's able to speak these beautiful prayers, right? And Dhruva, basically, he's saying that what I wanted before, meaning the kingdom greater than my father and my grandfather's, is like broken glass compared to the beautiful gem that is you. And so Dhruva ended up getting that kingdom anyway, though. The Lord said, okay, well, I'm going to give you that kingdom anyway. And he got the pole star. And so Dhruva ended up getting that kingdom, what he asked for, and he saw the Lord face to face. And all of that was because his mother started him off on that path. And also so did his stepmother, right? Even though she was very mean and very harsh, she still was able to start him off on that path. If she had not been that mean and harsh, would the story have turned out the same? We don't know. But her advice to go seek God so he can be born out of her womb, and then later going to his mother and her advice telling him, well, yes, you better go try to talk to God about this and go to the forest. That's where people go. That is what allowed Dhruva to be able to see the Lord face to face. And so I just want to remind everybody to appreciate all of the 7 mothers, right? All of the 7 mothers, and also your birth mothers. So give them a call today if you feel so inclined, or a visit. And so we'll end there. If there's any comments or questions, please. Yeah. Nope. Oh, mother's number.
You were mentioning about people do many different things to try to install folks trying to
Yeah.
be free from fear. And you mentioned, wearing makeup or, house or car, these things. But we also see that devotees use those so they can, maybe for different reasons, but, if someone feels very confident and very together, they can approach, Prabhupada always wanted the devotees to go and see, rich or influential people or government officers that, could possibly help the movement in some way. Because throughout his books, and he personally always said, unless the government, unless the leaders take the Krishna consciousness, then it'd be very difficult because they lead everyone. So, so someone may, and even Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj was criticized for, wearing stitched cloth, a suit, he even had a top hat, riding in not just a Rolls Royce, but a convertible Rolls Royce. But he was utilizing it, of course, for preaching. So what would you say to someone that maybe, someone that wasn't that in the know and said, oh, I see devotees, they got nice clothes, or, they're driving a nice car. And how is that spiritual? That just seems like they're hanging on to the same things we're hanging on to.
Yeah, because we can use literally everything in Krishna's service, right? And so really you have to look at what is the motivation behind using these things. Am I using that convertible Rolls Royce to just go to the beach and have a nice vacation with my family? Or am I using that convertible Rolls Royce to, help further our preaching movement? I mean, although we're both using that beautiful car, one is for my own personal enjoyment, and one is for the enjoyment of Krishna and for the furthering of this movement. And so we can use everything in the service of Krishna. I mean, just like this microphone, we can use like we're using it now to speak about the Srimad Bhagavatam, or we could use it to, speak hateful rhetoric and hateful things. But that doesn't, there's no fault of the microphone, right? It's the motivation behind what we're using it for. So, yeah.
Also, you're not attached to the. You're not attached to.
Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say, they're not attached to to what they use. The devotee's not attached.
Yeah.
What I was going to say was about the fear is that when I grew up, like when you're a little kid, you take shelter of your parents and you think you're kind of like safe, and then like, you lose that. And then you think like, okay, like I'm going to, get married and have a family and have a job and go to college and I'll do the whole thing. And you think that, yes, like then I'll be secure. But what I've come to realize is the more stuff you have, the more insecure you are.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, oh, I have a family, it's cool. It's like, oh, I have a family and when they're going to die, someone's going to cheat on me, someone's going to, that's the whole, and it's a great cause of anxiety that we take shelter of things to stop ourselves from the fear, but actually it just increases our fear. And it's a big trick. And I've learned that, before I was like seriously practicing Krishna consciousness, I went through that experience that, you're doing things to make yourself feel better, but actually they're causing you more fear because you're scared now that you're going to lose it, that you're not going to be able to maintain it, that you're not going to be able to, it's a whole thing. And then, you have an idea in your mind or you want something. And then now I'm scared I'm not going to get it, or I'm scared it's not going to work out. And so it's just the whole thing is more and more fear. And that's why when you surrender to Krishna, and like, even if one has a family, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, my wife, my children, my family, my house, all of them are yours, Nanda Kumar, Nanda Kumar, they're yours, and he actually meant it, he really meant it. He wasn't just saying it. And I was just thinking one last comment was, it's amazing to hear about Dhruva, but I was just thinking about Radhanath Swami because I thought about, how much courage and how amazing he was that he actually went into the forest, went into the Himalayas for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time, trying to seek God, and eventually found Prabhupada. But what an amazing, courage he had to actually seriously do that.
Yeah.
And fearlessness, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking full shelter.
Okay, Pavitra.
I just want to make a comment.
It's just for the internet. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You were just discussing about the three fears, and one of the fears that I've had, and I've had to outgrow it, is world nuclear war. So I've read all of what happens when there's a nuclear war, with the fallout and the effects of a nuclear war. Very, very scary. But Srila Prabhupada said, the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, what do we do if there's a nuclear war? I mean, what is our plan? Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna.
Yeah, exactly. Just keep doing what we're doing. Okay, Chandrika.
So it seems that, as it's Mother's Day, so I think the mother really gives us our first fears because we're always protecting them, like a baby starts to walk and it'll walk off a cliff if we didn't stop them. And so that's sort of like those kind of fears. So we're thankful for mothers for that.
Right.
But I think there's also a more deeper fear that can happen, like with Hiranyakashipu towards Prahlad Maharaj. What he's that demoniac energy trying to put into his son is a difference. So I think obviously by chanting Hare Krishna and taking to Krishna and trying to understand Krishna more deeply, that's going to release us from having that, being attacked by that fearful energy from the demons, basically. So really understanding fear in that sense, if it comes to attack us, and how Krishna conscious are we to not allow that attack to affect us deeply.
Yeah. My mother gave me a fear of green peppers when I was young. She just said they're too spicy. And so my whole life I never had any green peppers. And then I realized, oh wow, they're actually pretty good. So anyway.
Bell peppers?
Yeah, bell peppers. I don't know.
There are spicy bell peppers out there.
I Anyway, you wanted to say something else? Your time is short.
I was going to say that the the nuclear war and the economic collapse, and that's all just a result of artificial. Like like when I look at when I'm in Mayapur and I walk down the road and I see like there's these villagers, they just have like a cow in a field and like basically have like a brick house, but there's no like electricity. It's like when the economic collapse happens, they'll be fine.
Yeah, they won't even know probably.
But we're not going to be fine. That's the thing. And so we've artificially set up. And that's like a big example, but that as above, so below. You can apply that on a smaller level. We anything we do to like alleviate. I mean, Prahlad Maharaj says, or the Python sage, he says that the trick is that every single thing you do to fix try to satisfy dissatisfaction only causes more dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Maya Sukaya.
Only causes more.
You try to correct it and make it work.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything you do. And of course the classic example about the the yogi and the Copen.
Oh yeah,
He
that's
was
one great
meditating,
story.
and then,
I
next
mean,
thing you know,
yeah, and we see this in our culture right now. There's all this talk about pollution, right? Why do we have this pollution? Because we've invented so many like time-saving machines and stuff, or cars, right? Cars are great. They get us from here to here. It's much faster. It's quicker. It's more comfortable. And walking or riding in a carriage, but it's causing so much pollution, right? It's causing noise pollution, it's causing, pollution from the oil, it's causing so much pollution because, we're trying to fix these issues that really aren't really issues, but we're imagining that they are.
Humans are so stupid that they have this concept, right? In Arizona, you see a lot of controlled burn.
Yeah.
Controlled burn has caused the fires to be so much worse because of these controlled burns. And we're going to burn the brush so that then now the fire just burns the trees. But previously, the whole nature was doing fine before we were doing controlled burns. There was no forest fires like we're seeing now until we came along and decided to start controlling. So it's our idiocy, that we're trying to, the castles made of sand.
Yeah,
Just crumble into the sea.
There was a silly joke where a priest and he had oversaw the kind of construction of this beautiful garden at the church, right? It was a beautiful garden, and all the parishioners were like, "Oh wow, this garden is so beautiful." And he says, "Oh yes, but you should have seen it before. You should have seen it when the Lord was in charge of it." And meaning like. It was all, overgrown and all this stuff. And this is our kind of great hubris, right? To think like, oh, yes, we're gonna improve on this, even though we can't even manage to, make a car that doesn't give pollution, right? But we're gonna improve upon, yeah.
I just off the subject just a little bit, but I think it's from what's a small book where Prabhupada's defeating the scientists. What's it? Huh?
Life comes from life.
Yeah, life comes from life. Yeah, I think that's it.
Or was it
Anyway,
Easy Journey?
the scientists were explaining how they're going to create life, right? And I just thought this was absolutely ingenious. Prabhupada said, life is already here. How can you create it? You take what's already here and you put all the elements together. Then you say, "Oh, look what we did! We created life." And I because the scientists, they have such elaborate and sophisticated words. They really bewilder people. Even they can even bewilder a devotee if you're not really strong because they're so, into it. They kind of. Pull you away from it a little bit. I've had the experience on Sankirtan before where I'm like, yeah, maybe. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah. What are they talking about?
Yeah.
But
There's I don't remember if this is like in the 1700s or maybe the 1600s. There was a recipe to make life. And that recipe was you take a this is very scientific, right? You take a piece of meat. You take a piece of meat and you put it in a basket and, like put it in the dark somewhere. And then you come back in, a few days and then there's life, right? Because there's maggots and things, right? And they think, oh, yes, I've created life.
Yeah.
But no, we know, no,
Someone said that you have a dead body. Person has left the body. He said all the elements and all the elements are there. Earth, air, fire, water, ether, everything is there. Why can't you bring this dead body back to life? Everything's there. He said, well, someday we're learning, that's what they're thinking,
of course, as our great egos that we have.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Uh,
Dr. Raj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.
Is it